Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told His podcast.
You ready for a deep dive?
Absolutely. I love these. And today's going to be a good one.
It really is.
We're diving deep into the world of Harry Styles.
Well, it's pretty fascinating. How did this guy become such a cultural force?
Right. Like you think pop star, you think, okay, catchy tunes, big concerts.
Right.
But Harry Styles is something else entirely. It's
Yeah.
like he transcends that label.
He really does. He's a musician, yeah, but also a fashion icon, an actor, an
Yeah,
activist.
yeah, he's got his fingers in so many pies. It's impressive.
So where do we even begin with a story like this?
Well, I think the obvious starting point is One Direction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where most people first encountered him, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to overstate just how big they were. 70 million records sold worldwide.
Huh.
Awards galore, 7 Brit Awards, 7 American Music Awards, 4 MTV Video Music Awards, just to name a few.
It was a full-on phenomenon,
Yeah.
the kind of fame that's hard to even grasp.
Yeah, it was like Beatlemania all over again. Totally. And in the middle of all that chaos, you had Harry Styles.
So how did he manage to carve out his own path from that? So many boy band members kind of fade away when the group ends.
Right. It's like the curse of the boy band. But Harry, he did something different.
What was it about him that allowed him to break free from that trajectory?
I think even back then, there were these little hints that he was something special. He was already co-writing songs for other artists, like Ariana Grande.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he was starting to experiment with his style a bit, pushing those boy band boundaries.
Yeah, there were definitely some fashion risks happening even then.
Exactly. It felt like he had this vision, this artistic drive that went beyond just being a manufactured pop star.
And then, boom.
Mm-hmm.
2016, One Direction goes on hiatus.
And Harry Styles drops his self-titled debut album.
Which immediately shot to the top of charts globally.
It was a statement, like, I'm here, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah, it felt like a declaration of independence.
Totally. And the album was good, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it did well.
But it felt like he was still kind of finding his footing,
Like testing the waters.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
could hear the influences, the classic rock vibes, a little bit of Bowie in there.
Yeah, you could definitely hear those influences.
But it's with Fine Line, his second album, that things really took off.
That's when the critics really started paying attention.
Oh yeah, Fine Line was a game changer. That's where you really hear him coming into his own.
Blending soft rock with glam rock, a little funk, some soul.
Yeah, it was like this beautiful mix of genres.
And it was all so cohesive, so distinctly him.
That's what's so impressive. He didn't just follow trends, he created his own sound.
And the accolades started rolling in.
Yeah. Fine Line even landed on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. Not many pop albums achieved that level of recognition.
So what was it about Fine Line that resonated so deeply?
I think it signaled a real artistic maturity that a lot of people weren't expecting from a former boy band member,
It defied those expectations.
Exactly. It showed that he wasn't just riding the wave of One Direction's success. He was a serious artist, pushing boundaries, growing, experimenting.
People respected that.
They did. And then the ultimate validation. Album of the Year at the Grammys in 2023 for Harry's House.
I mean, come on, that's the pinnacle.
It really is. It solidified his status, like he's not just a pop star, he's an artist with staying power.
And we can't forget, as it was, the global smash hit in 2022.
Yeah, that song was everywhere.
It's like the perfect example of how he manages to create music that's both deeply personal and incredibly catchy.
It's emotional, relatable, and just undeniably Harry Styles.
And on top of all the music success, he decides to try his hand at acting.
Yeah, and not just in any random rom-com either.
Hmm.
He picks roles that are challenging, interesting.
Dunkirk, don't worry, darling, my policeman.
He's not afraid to push himself out of his comfort zone.
Which is impressive, especially when you already have this massive global platform as a musician.
It shows a real hunger to grow, to explore different creative avenues.
And speaking of pushing boundaries, we have to talk about Harry Styles, the fashion iconoclast.
Oh, yes. This is where it gets really interesting, because his fashion journey is as much about self-expression as it is about challenging norms.
It's amazing to see how his style has evolved over the years.
Right. Think back to those early One Direction days.
Skinny jeans, floral prints, that whole boy band aesthetic.
Cute, but pretty safe, right?
Yeah, pretty standard boy band fare.
But then things started to shift.
He started taking more risks.
Yeah, he and his stylist, Harry Lambert, who, by the way, he's been working with since One Direction's 4 era back in 2014.
Wow, that's a long-standing partnership.
It is. They clearly have a great creative synergy. But anyway, they started experimenting with Bolder colors, textures, silhouettes, playing with gender fluidity.
And it culminated in that iconic 2020 Vogue cover.
The first man to appear solo on the cover of Vogue. And he was wearing a dress.
Talk about a statement. That cover broke the internet.
It did. And it sparked a really important conversation about masculinity, fashion, and the freedom to express yourself beyond traditional gender norms.
I mean, there was some backlash, of course.
Oh, yeah. There were accusations of appropriating femininity, mocking women's clothing.
But Harry's response was so simple, so brilliant.
What'd he say?
He basically said, to me, clothes are about having fun. It's about expression. There's no right or wrong.
I love that. He's basically saying, let's not take ourselves too seriously. Fashion is about playfulness, about pushing boundaries.
Exactly. And he's not just talking the talk. Look at the designers he wears. Gucci, Harris Reed, SS Daily, Bode.
Yeah, he's not afraid to wear clothes that challenge those traditional masculine ideals.
And he even launched his own gender-neutral skin and nail care brand, Pleasing.
Oh, yeah. That was a big move.
It's clear that this is more than just a fashion phase for him.
It's an integral part of who he is, how he expresses himself, and how he views the world.
It's about breaking down those old, rigid categories and embracing individuality.
And the impact is undeniable. He's inspired a whole generation to be more open, more experimental with their style.
His concerts are like giant fashion shows.
They really are. People go all out, expressing their own unique style. It's incredible to see.
And, speaking of this deep dive, if you're finding it as fascinating as I am, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Yes, so you don't miss any future episodes of Tell Me More.
We explore so many incredible stories just like this one.
Stories that make you think, make you question, make you see the world a little differently.
Okay, so back to Harry. It's fascinating how his influence extends beyond music and fashion. I mean, there's literally a university course dedicated to him at Texas State University.
Harry Styles and the cult of celebrity, identity, the internet, and European pop culture.
That's wild. What do you think sparked that level of academic interest?
I think it speaks to his broader cultural impact. He's become the symbol of something bigger than himself. This yearning for authenticity, for inclusivity, for breaking down those old limiting definitions.
He's become a cultural force.
Yeah.
And we haven't even touched on his philanthropic work and his activism yet.
Oh, yeah. He's a champion for so many causes.
LGBTQ+ rights, Black Lives Matter, gun control, reproductive rights.
It's impressive. And he's not just passively supporting these causes either.
He's putting his money where his mouth is.
Right. He's donating millions of dollars through his tours.
He's using his platform to raise awareness.
And he's connecting with fans on a personal level, like that time he helped a fan come out to her mom during a concert.
I remember that. It was so heartwarming. Talk about using your platform for good.
Exactly. He's not afraid to turn his concerts into spaces for activism.
Promoting messages of kindness, acceptance, inclusivity.
He's waved pride flags on stage, spoken out against groups like the Westboro Baptist Church. His actions speak volumes.
It's not just symbolic gestures either. He's raised millions for organizations like Physicians for Reproductive Health, Everytown for Gun Safety.
He's walking the walk.
He really is. And he's doing it in a way that feels genuine, connected to his personal values.
Yeah, you can tell these causes are important to him. He even endorsed Joe Biden in the 2020 U.S. presidential election.
Wow. Even though he's a British citizen.
I know. That takes guts, especially in such a polarized political climate.
But that's Harry. He's not afraid to take a stand, even if it means alienating some fans.
He seems more concerned with staying true to his beliefs than with pleasing everyone.
And that's what makes him so inspiring.
It really does. He's showing a generation that it's okay to care about the world, to speak out against injustice.
To use your voice for positive change, even if it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's a powerful message. And it's a stark contrast to some celebrities who seem afraid to alienate any part of their fan base by taking a stance.
Harry's not afraid to be polarizing. He's not afraid to be himself.
And that's perhaps one of the biggest reasons why his impact is so profound.
He's not just entertaining. He's inspiring a generation to be more thoughtful, more compassionate, more engaged with the world.
Absolutely. And now we have to address this really fascinating internet phenomenon that's developed around him.
Larry Stylinson.
Yes. We can't do a deep dive into Harry Styles without talking about Larry Stylinson.
It's wild, isn't it? How these fan-created narratives can take on a life of their own.
It really is. It speaks volumes about celebrity culture in the age of the internet.
So, for those who aren't familiar, Larry Stylinson is this conspiracy theory that claims Harry and his former bandmate, Louis Tomlinson, are secretly in a romantic relationship.
Right. And it's been going on for years.
It's incredible how persistent it is, even in the face of denials from both Harry and Louis.
It speaks to the power of the internet, how fans can create these alternate realities, these narratives that exist outside of the official story.
And it raises some interesting questions about the ethics of fandom, about the boundaries between admiration and obsession.
Yeah, it's a complex issue. On one hand, it's kind of sweet that fans are so invested in these celebrities' lives.
That they care so much that they create these elaborate stories.
Right. But on the other hand, it can be invasive, even harmful.
Especially when it starts to affect the celebrities themselves.
Exactly. In the case of Larry Stylinson, it's fueled speculation about Harry and Louis' sexualities, which can be really uncomfortable for them.
It puts pressure on them to label themselves, to conform to these fan-created narratives.
And that's not fair. It's their right to define their own identities on their own terms.
It highlights this tension that exists between a celebrity's right to privacy and the public's desire to know every detail of their lives.
And that tension is amplified in the digital age, where social media gives fans this unprecedented access to celebrities' lives.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Get foster deeper connections, but it can also blur the lines between the personal and the public.
Exactly. And it can fuel speculation, fan theories, even harassment.
It's something we all need to be mindful of as we navigate this increasingly digital world.
We need to be able to celebrate pop culture and fandom without overstepping boundaries.
Without losing sight of the fact that celebrities are real people with feelings and lives of their own.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's a good place to take a break.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground already. From boy band beginnings to global stardom, from fashion iconoclast to activist, from internet theories to the complexities of fandom.
It's amazing how much there is to unpack with Harry Styles.
He's a fascinating figure, and we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of Harry Styles.
We'll be back soon with more insights, more stories, and more surprises.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode of Tell Me More. We've got so many fascinating deep dives coming your way.
Okay, so we've talked about Harry's journey from those boy band days to solo superstardom.
Yeah, for those early fashion choices to becoming this fashion iconoclast.
And from, those hints of activism to really becoming a vocal advocate for all these important causes.
But there's another layer to his story that we haven't fully explored yet, and it's something that I think really sets him apart.
What's that?
His impact on fandom itself. It's not just about screaming teenagers at concerts anymore.
Right, it's something different.
Harry has cultivated this incredibly diverse and passionate fan base.
They're really something special.
And it's changing what it means to be a fan in the 21st century.
Okay, so what do you think is different about his fan base compared to, say, traditional fandoms?
I think it's the breadth, the diversity.
Yeah.
It's not limited to one age group or demographic.
Yeah, you see people of all ages, genders, backgrounds at his concerts.
It's a true mix of humanity, all united by their love for his music and his message.
And what is that message? What do you think draws all these different people to him?
I think it's his authenticity, his vulnerability. He's not afraid to be himself, even with all eyes on him.
That's a powerful thing to see, especially for young people who are still figuring themselves out.
Right. It's like he's giving everyone permission to just be who they are.
To embrace their individuality, their quirks, their differences.
And his fans, they're not just passively consuming his music. They're creating, sharing, connecting, building this vibrant community around him.
You see it online, at his concerts, everywhere. It's a constant exchange of energy and creativity.
It's really something special.
It is, and it feels different from that typical artist-fan dynamic. There's this sense of mutual respect, shared values.
Yeah, it feels more like a partnership.
Exactly. And Harry, he acknowledges that. He interacts with his fans online, in person. He makes them feel seen, heard, appreciated.
And that creates this incredible sense of loyalty, of belonging.
His fans, they're fiercely protective of him. They celebrate his successes and they rally around him when he's facing criticism.
It's like a family. And this sense of community is amplified by Harry's constant message of kindness, acceptance, inclusivity.
Yeah, it creates a space where people feel safe to be themselves, to express their individuality without judgment.
And it's all on display at his concerts. It's not just about the music, it's about the fashion, the energy, the feeling of belonging.
They're legendary,
Yeah.
People go all out with their outfits, expressing their creativity, their personalities.
That's like a giant fan Met Gala.
It really is.
Mm.
And it's amazing to see how his concerts have become these safe spaces for self-expression.
But we also have to acknowledge the flip side of fandom, right?
The potential for things to go too far.
The obsessive behavior, the sometimes delusional thinking.
We've talked about the Larry Stylinson phenomenon.
Yeah, and that's a prime example of how fandom can cross those boundaries.
It's a reminder that while fandom can be positive and empowering, it can also become unhealthy.
It's about finding that balance.
Right. Being passionate without losing sight of reality, of respect for the individual.
And Harry himself, he seems to be aware of this tension. He encourages kindness among his fans, sets boundaries, reminds them that ultimately it's about the music, the connection, the shared values.
He's trying to steer the ship in a positive direction.
And it's not just about the intangible aspects of fandom. Either, Harry's impact has manifested in some pretty tangible ways.
Oh, yeah. Wax figures at Madame Tussauds.
A museum-worthy cardigan.
Even a walking tour in his childhood village.
It's crazy how his influence has seeped into all these different corners of the world.
He's become a cultural touchstone, woven into the fabric of our collective experience.
So what do you think makes him so iconic? Why Harry Styles, out of all the pop stars in the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's hard to pinpoint one specific thing. Maybe it's the combination of everything we've been talking about.
The music, the fashion, the activism, the fandom, the way he carries himself.
Maybe it's his authenticity
Mm-hmm.
in a world that often feels artificial.
That's a good point. He seems so genuine, so connected to who he is, even under the intense pressure of fame.
It's refreshing, isn't it?
It really is. He's like a breath of fresh air in a world that's often suffocating with pretense.
But it makes you wonder, can he sustain this level of authenticity in the long run?
That's the big question. Can anyone stay truly authentic when they're under constant scrutiny?
Only time will tell.
But I think it's worth noting that he hasn't shown any signs of wavering yet.
He's still pushing boundaries, evolving, challenging himself in the world around him.
And that's what makes him so captivating. We don't know what he'll do next. Will he keep making music? Will he dive deeper into acting? Will he become a full-fledged fashion designer?
Or maybe he'll run for office.
No, that would be something.
Whatever he chooses to do, I have a feeling it will be unexpected, thought-provoking, and definitely spark a lot of conversations.
And we'll be here, ready to dive deep into the next chapter of the Harry Styles saga.
But for now, let's shift gears a bit and focus on a particularly fascinating aspect of Harry's journey that we haven't fully explored yet.
Okay, what's that?
The internet phenomenon known as Larry Stylinson.
Ah, yes. The gift that keeps on giving.
It's a rabbit hole that we have to go down.
It's just too juicy to ignore.
Because it really speaks volumes about Harry's cultural impact and his ability to challenge conventions.
Okay, let's do it. Let's dive into the world of Larry Stylinson.
All right, so buckle up, folks, because we're going deep into Larry Stylinson territory.
This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about a fan-driven conspiracy theory
That's taken on a life of its own.
for years now.
Okay, so for those who might not be in the know, Larry Stylinson is this fan theory that suggests there's a secret romantic relationship between Harry and his former One Direction bandmate, Louis Tomlinson.
Right.
It's wild, isn't it?
It really is.
And it's fueled by, like, everything.
Oh, yeah. Fan-created content, interpretations of their lyrics and interviews, those little glances they might share on stage.
Even, like, seemingly insignificant interactions.
Exactly. Fans are like detectives, They piece together all this evidence.
So what do you think it is about this particular pairing that, like, captured the imaginations of so many fans?
Well, first, I think it's about the narrative.
The story.
Yeah, like humans, we're hardwired for stories, right? And we especially love a good romance.
It's that classic will they, won't they tension.
Exactly. And Larry Stylinson taps into that perfectly.
We're also suckers for a good mystery, so the whole conspiracy element adds another layer of intrigue.
Totally. And then you factor in the parasocial relationships that fans often develop with celebrities.
Especially with boy bands.
Oh, yeah, it's like amplified tenfold with boy bands, where the marketing often emphasizes that close bond between members.
That sense of intimacy.
Right. And it creates this perfect breeding ground for speculation and interpretation.
Like, fans start to project their own desires and fantasies onto these celebrities.
Exactly. And with the internet, those fantasies can spread like wildfire.
It becomes this collective storytelling project,
Totally. And Larry Stylinson is like the ultimate example of that.
It's like fan fiction gone mainstream.
Right. Fans have created these elaborate timelines, these intricate interpretations of every little detail.
It's impressive, the level of dedication and creativity.
It really is. It shows the power of fan culture, the
Yeah.
way it can create these alternate realities.
But it's also important to remember the potential downsides,
Oh, absolutely. Like, it can get invasive, you know?
and even potentially harmful,
Right.
especially in this case where it's fueled all this speculation about Harry and Louis' sexualities,
Yeah, and that can be really damaging.
putting pressure on them to define themselves in a way that might not feel comfortable or authentic.
Exactly. It's like their personal lives become public fodder for speculation.
It highlights those blurry lines between admiration and obsession.
And it raises questions about the ethics of fandom, like where do we draw the line?
When does harmless fun turn into something that's actually harmful?
Right. And I think it's a conversation we need to be having, especially in this digital age where everything is so amplified.
We need to be able to celebrate fandom, to enjoy those connections, but also to recognize when we're crossing boundaries.
To be respectful of the individuals involved, to remember that they have lives and feelings outside of our fantasies.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. And I think it all comes back to that idea of authenticity that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, Harry's own commitment to being himself, to living his life on his own terms, inspires his fans to do the same.
To embrace their own identities, their own truths.
And that's a powerful message.
It is, and it's something we can all take away from this deep dive, even if we're not diehard Harry Styles fans.
It's about embracing individuality, challenging conventions, using your voice for good.
And recognizing the power of storytelling, both in its positive and potentially negative forms.
And with that, I think we've come full circle.
We've gone from those early One Direction days to this global phenomenon.
We've explored the music, the fashion, the activism, the fandom, the internet theories, all of it.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But ultimately, it all points back to one thing. Harry Styles' unwavering commitment to being himself, to living authentically, to inspiring others to do the same.
And that's a legacy that will likely continue to unfold for years to come.
And we'll be here, ready to dive deep into whatever the next chapter holds.
But for now, we want to hear from you.
What are your thoughts on Harry Styles' impact on music, fashion, culture? How has his journey inspired you?
Share your insights or questions, your own personal connections to his story.
Because that's what this deep dive is all about. Exploring these fascinating stories, connecting with each other, and expanding our understanding of the world around us.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
And remember, keep telling those stories.